If the Bible's got you tied in knots, if you're burdened with religious thoughts, come grab a drink and join the choir. It's Heretic Happy Hour.
Hey, how you doing, everyone? Welcome to the Heretic Happy Hour podcast. I am one of your three hosts. My name is Keith Giles. Let's see. I'm an author, and I do a lot of other things. Mow the yard, do windows, things like that. But hey, I wanted to let you know, if you're listening to the podcast, by the way, and it seems like you might be, because here you are. This is our.
Within the first minute, you got trombone. Son.
That must be a record. Hey, so this is our final episode in the Culture War series. I'm so sorry. I know you've been loving it. This is our final episode in this series. But hey, next time we're going to start a brand new series. And the new series we're going to start will be Let's Get Metaphysical. Let's get metaphysical. Okay, and just so you know, coming up, we have interviewed the creator of this awesome show on Netflix called Messiah, Michael Petroni. It was an amazing interview. We cannot wait to share it with you. And some of the things we'll talk about in this new series, Let's Get Metaphysical, will be topics like reincarnation and angels and demons and miracles and things like that, because I know these are things people have been asking us about for a long time, and we can't wait to talk about it. So mark your calendars. And it's probably a good time also to ask my co-hosts who've been waiting so patiently to introduce themselves. Jamal and Matt, say hi.
Hi, friends. This is Jamal. Speaking of new series, Keith, I'm excited because I know this is when you let the cat out of the bag about reincarnation, because I know you've been secretly hiding that belief. So,
well, you have to listen to the episode to find out. Totally.
But it's good to be back on the Heretic Happy Hour podcast. I'm the author of Living for a Living. And so if you haven't picked up that book, you might want to get that. But it's really good to be back with you. And I will transition to our next host.
Yeah, and that makes me Matthew DiStefano, author of 5 books, and now about to be a hip-hop artist. Well, I guess I am a hip-hop artist. I'm recording my first album.
I've heard some of it. Actually, you sent me a track today that was like flipping awesome, man. It was really good. I did.
Super excited about that, and excited for, of course, another episode of the Heretic Happy Hour. But before we get into all the good stuff, got to remind everyone that we are sponsored by Wild Foods. Woo-hoo! And their website can be found at wildfoods.co. And like I said last time, they are putting out some great products from small batch farmers. I've been trying the Cocotropic Superfood Cocoa Drink Mix in my coffee, and it is keeping me super focused.
Yeah.
That's why I'm always on my game here at the Heretic Happy Hour. If you've noticed lately, I've been especially on point, and that's thanks to these mushrooms that they got in their Cocotropic Superfood. I'm convinced that that's what's going on. So
that's cool.
If you don't know the benefits of mushrooms, not those kind of mushrooms. Well, those too, but that's not what they're doing. You got to go to wildfoods.co, check out their Cocotropic Superfood Cocoa Drink Mix, check out all of their products.
Yeah.
And if you use our code, our special code just for our listeners, Happy Hour 12, that's the digits 12, Happy Hour 12. When you check out, you are going to get 12% off your order. Ooh. That's the 12. That's what it stands for. 12% off. So if you use that promo code when you buy those products, you're going to get 12% off.
Wow.
So who doesn't want discounts? Who doesn't want good products? Who doesn't want to feel better? I know you all do. I know I do. So make sure you do that. Check it out today. Yeah.
Yeah. And I wanted to also say that if you're listening to this podcast and you're a first time listener, this is your first episode. Well, I have some good news for you. We actually have a hotline. So this is a lot of podcasts you listen to do not have a hotline, but we do. Mm. And the number is 240-343-7379. Again, it's 240-343-7379. And a bonus to this hotline is not only can you call it 24/7, you can text it as well. So yeah, millennials like to text. That's what I hear. And
the kids these days,
yes.
Yeah, kids love it.
They love it. They love it. So here we actually had a text come into the hotline. Imagine that. Can we cue that up? Okay, here's the text. Quote, "Hello, heretics. I wanted to thank you for your work and all the insight it brings. I am a UU." Not sure what that means.
Unitarian Universalist, I think.
Oh, yes. Okay, that's right. I am a Unitarian Universalist and have lately been interested in Christian history and theology. I have found the Christian literature ecosystem often bewildering, never sure about authors' agendas or scholarly grounding. I've found I can always turn to you three and your guests for deep investigations of theological questions. And between your guest and sources you mentioned, references to other thinkers and similarly thoughtful approaches. Sorry. My only complaint is that my reading list has exploded since I began listening. Keith, that's Keith's fault. And I doubt I'll ever be able to read everything I want to on this topic in my lifetime. I have a question and a story for you. Number one, is there an annotated Bible translation you would recommend for digging into theological questions that turn on translation problems? And number two, a while back, you asked for funny Bible stories for your contest, and I just had to share this one with you. When my uncle was 4, his Sunday school teacher instructed the kids to draw a picture of God driving Adam and Eve from the garden. The son of a car dealer, my uncle produced a detailed crayon drawing of a huge black car speeding through a garden, driven by a man with a long white beard, with a man and a woman in the back seat. Sadly, some upstanding member of the congregation agreed with the teacher that the drawing was brilliant and took it from the church bulletin board, so it's no longer in the family. Of note, my uncle grew up to become a mechanic. Thanks again, guys, for all you do. Katie R., Madison, Wisconsin.
Thank you, Katie. That was a very long but very entertaining and wonderful text. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a long text.
Ooh,
I don't even know how you send a text that long.
Well, I love that story because don't you just love how kids think?
Oh yeah, totally.
Just so literally. Like I remember hearing some terminology about Jesus living in our hearts, when I was a little kid, and I literally was like, but my heart, the ventricles, like, is he in all the ventricles? Like, it's separate. How do you fit in there? Like, how does he get in there? So literal.
It's all that blood going through all the time. How does he sleep at night? I don't understand.
Yes, what is that like? There was a movie I watched when I was a kid about like people being inside the human body and like a little ship, and they would like go through the blood vessels, and you remember that? It was like antibodies.
Fantastic Voyage, I think, or something like that.
Yeah. It's an old movie, but man, I thought about that. Like if they traveled to the heart, they'd find Jesus like there somewhere,
just chilling in there, smoking a J.
Yeah. So, hey, Katie asked us a question, if you can remember that far back. She said something about asking if there was an annotated Bible translation that we would recommend for digging into theological questions that turn on translation problems.
Well, first off, the Bible doesn't exist, so no.
True. And it's hard to recommend a Bible when we don't, believe it's real, and you probably shouldn't be reading it in the first place. It's dangerous. But no, I get this question all the time. Seriously, someone asked me this morning. Someone emailed me and asked me a very similar question about like what Bible translations that I recommend. I don't know of any specifically that I think accurately deal with a lot of these really bad translation problems that most English translations suffer from. I've written a lot to kind of like point out the ones that I've come across, but as far as I know, there isn't a Bible translation in English that 100% eliminates those. I love David Bentley Hart's New Testament translation. I think he deals with most of the ones in the New Testament. But I don't know of any like a complete Bible translation that really does a complete and thorough job. I don't know, Matt, do you know of any, or Jamal, do you know anything?
Well, no, I don't. I mean, I think there are some that wrestle with this kind of stuff. I'm not sure which one's better or worse. Like I don't really read the Bible anymore, and I don't care about like these scholarly questions any longer. I've gotten I've moved so far past that I don't think about these things any longer. So I don't know. I'm sorry. I was going to mention David Bentley Hart, but you did, and that's only the New Testament. So if you're looking for the entire, all 66 books, because we're good Protestants, I don't know. I'm sorry, Katie from Madison.
Yeah. I tend to think that the Bible is severely overrated. So, and I don't think it was a good idea back in the 4th century when Constantine said, "Hey guys, let me get everybody together, get everybody to kind of coalesce around a set of documents." I don't think that was a good idea historically. So I'm not one to recommend the Bible. However, when it comes to, and again, Jesus never recommended us to read the Bible. So I think it's overrated. However, I get it. I love some of the writings that are included in that collection. And so I think there was a translation a while back called the Mirror translation. Mm-hmm. That I think is really good. I actually think from what I've seen, the approach they take is, again, it's not like, it's written from a perspective that, and again, it's not exhaustive. I don't think it's the entire New Testament. It's not the Old Testament.
Right. I think it's missing some books. Yeah. It's not complete yet.
It's more of an interpretation too, right?
Yeah, it's more of an interpretation, but I think it's written from, I think the folks who worked on it, are scholars and, really came from a very educated place and know the original languages or really looked into them. And so it's not a shoddy job. It's a really good, but it's written from a perspective, so I like it. And I would recommend that if someone was going to read it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there you go.
There you go. All right. I think we covered that. At least I hope.
I hope so.
I would just say one sort of caveat thing, or not a caveat, but it's another recommendation. If you're curious about the Old Testament, a book that has really, really helped me in the way I approach the Old Testament is I think an excellent book by a guy named Richard Elliott Friedman. It's called Who Wrote the Bible? It's a scholarly book, but by the way, but it's written like almost like a mystery novel. It's like, I'm telling you, it's so well written. And it's phenomenal. I mean, I recommend it to many people. So yeah, I think that's a great one to look at if you're curious about how to approach and understand the Old Testament scriptures.
Totally. And also, I forgot to mention this, but Rob Bell has a great resource called What is the Bible?
Yeah, that is a good book.
Yeah, that could be really helpful. And I totally would agree with where he's coming from with that.
Yeah, and Peter Enns too, friend of the show.
Yeah.
He has what's his book called? I can't remember. He's got a book on the Bible.
No, you put
but just look up Peter Enns, you'll find it. Yeah,
he's awesome.
Yeah.
All
So
right,
let's get into the next segment, right? Let's do this thing.
It's the Heretic of the Week.
Hi, I'm Josh Roggie, and I am a heretic.
Hi, Josh.
Hey, what's up?
Hey, man. Welcome to the Heretic Happy Hour.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is awesome. Hey, so Josh, we always have to start off by asking, why in the world would anybody think that you are a heretic?
God, there's probably 100 reasons why. Let's see here. Well, I don't believe that the Bible's inerrant. Don't believe in eternal conscious torment. I'm gay affirming. I occasionally say the fuck word. There's that. I think probably the latest reason to add to the list would be that I've come to find more value in telling people my story rather than evangelizing with the gospel. At least for me, I find that I connect more with people by telling them my own lived experiences and the ways that Christianity is, interwoven rather than focusing on the gospel story itself. So because of that, I also don't really put any energy into trying to get people to make a so-called decision or anything along those lines. So yeah, dealer's choice there, Keith.
Wow. Yeah, you got I think that's basically a full house. That's a good job there.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. So you also just recently kind of sat down and told your story. You talk about, you rather tell your story than share the gospel or evangelize. And so you actually told your story in the form of writing a book about some of your experiences. And tell us about that. What was that like? Why did you feel the need to write the book?
Yeah. So my book is called Shame, an Unconventional Memoir. Just came out February 11th. And this book is, I guess the biggest reason ultimately that I ended up writing it was I just wanted to be able to tell people that whatever you've experienced, whatever shame has been put on you, or, maybe mistakes that you've made that have created your own shame cycle, that you're not alone, that, other people have had these experiences. And I'm going to demonstrate that by starting out, introducing myself and telling you all of the shame, embarrassment, and guilt that I've had heaped on me over the years.
Wow. So why did you feel that you needed to start with shame? I mean, why was that your starting point, or why did you feel like that was such an important topic to address?
Yeah. Originally, when I was putting this project together, I actually didn't have that as the starting point for me. The original purpose, I guess, was that I was just very tired of what I would call image management that I was seeing a lot by especially leaders in the church. I was tired of, listening to sermons and hearing pastors tell me about the sins that they had, I guess, made mistakes through or whatever. And there's examples were always really bullshit examples. They were telling me about how they stole a pack of gum when they were 10 years old. And I was like, or we could talk about real stuff that you're dealing with right now. Yeah. So originally it was just going to be maybe a blog or something like that. I started doing some essays where I'm like, I want to talk about the things I've dealt with. And then I really came to the realization that I think this is not unique to me, but the church system in general really pushes, or at least the way it's designed, whether it's by accident or on purpose, it really puts shame onto people in so many different ways that they don't feel as if they can tell those realities.
Wow, that's really good. That's really good. Well, Josh, I appreciate you. I appreciate being vulnerable. I think vulnerability there's a lot of power in being vulnerable. Just sharing your story and that kind of thing. What has been the reaction, like when you started to write or become more public about just, opening your life up and letting people take a look at what that authenticity looks like? What did you notice from the Christian circles that you were in, from the church community that you were in? What was kind of the response to that?
Yeah. God, I mean, for starters, the reaction within myself, before I even had a chance to share it with other people, I didn't realize a lot of the things that were weighing on me. I ended up writing more about my childhood than I would have expected, as I kind of built the foundation to get to, what I currently am living. In terms of the reaction from, early readers and whatnot, it's been all positive. I've been thrilled because I'll be honest, I was so anxious about so much of this. I guess I still am to some degree. The book is in the very early stages when it comes to release and all of that. But I've honestly gotten nothing but positive feedback from everybody from, of course, my wife read very early drafts. I just had my parents read it just a little over a month ago. And it really, in a lot of ways, acted as a bridge for us. We had some difficulties talking about the ways in which we've disagreed and stuff. And it really built a bridge there. And then with friends and even new friends that I didn't really know before they had read the book, it's been nothing but positive feedback of, that's awesome. Thank you for being so vulnerable. And here is the chapter that hit home the most for me, which has been outstanding as well.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. I have a question for you. I love what you're saying. You talked about, just mentioned something about your childhood, like, that's something that that jumped out to you in your process as you were writing and, unpacking your story. And I totally resonate with that. I mean, a lot of the work that I do, I mean, I'm in the coaching business. So when I'm working with clients, I mean, it's fascinating to discover the programming that we've received from an early age, because that shapes how we look at the world, shapes how we relate to God, to people, all those things. And so like unpacking that programming is so key. So a question for you would be, what if you could like specify, like, was there something specific about the story or the way you were taught to look at the world through that you had to really, what was your unpacking or deconstruction process like from your early programming? If I could put it that way.
Yeah. It's kind of messy, to be honest. I have a couple different thoughts popping in my head. That's a great question. I think on the one hand, one thing that comes to mind is I was bullied pretty extensively as a kid, especially in like maybe about 5th grade through 7th or 8th grade. And there's several reasons for that. I was smaller for my age. I've always been a smaller guy. I originally grew up and was raised Mennonite until 4th grade, and then went to a public school, and that's a huge transition. So I had a pretty different upbringing than my peers at the time. And all that to say, it was definitely not like just roughhousing. It was full on bullying for sure. Wow. And I guess that, once I got into high school and it was all behind me, and then beyond that into my 20s, I thought that just because it was physically behind me, that I didn't really need to think about it anymore. And it really came up through the process of writing this book, that's probably where a lot of my anxieties and stuff have come from, and my nervous habits, chewing my fingernails and stuff like this. So it really it circled me back around to something that I thought I could probably ignore the rest of my life and wasn't being realistic about.
Wow. I have a good friend of mine who speaks quite often on this topic of shame and what I have termed worm theology, this sort of like what a wretch I am, I'm not worthy, and there's nothing good in me, and all that kind of nonsense that frankly the church reinforces over and over and over again, everything from hymns on Sunday morning and our worship songs that we sing to the scriptures that we tend to emphasize in the sermons that we hear. And eventually even the stories we tell ourselves, we start repeating these things again about ourselves. We start believing it about ourselves. One of the things that my friend had said, I frankly think it's a quote from Brene Brown, but it's something like along the lines of that shame dies in the light, or that it thrives in the darkness. And so that because of that, we can't hold these things. We can't keep them in the dark. The things that we feel shame about, we have to tell those stories. We have to bring it out into the light. And when we do, it exposes it and kills it, and it loses its power. And I think that's the thought behind the phrase or the statement. I'm curious if you felt the same way telling your story. Do you feel like telling your story was sort of a way to escape the power of shame, or do you agree with that idea?
Yeah, I completely agree with that concept. I wasn't aware of her exact quote when I started this whole thing, but that is exactly the logic I had, that, it actually came from, for me, I can't remember the passage now, but Paul talks about, bringing your sin to the light. And though I have probably a different definition than what I've traditionally had nowadays for sin, I basically equated that as shame. And so I very much believe in that process of like, hey, as long as you allow it to be inside of you and be isolated where you're the only one dealing with it, it's just not going to go anywhere. Many times it may even, grow in a sense and become a more, I guess for lack of a better term, it'll become, more of a burden than what it already was. So yeah, this very much started out as, I'm just going to bring my stuff to the light. And I'm hopeful, and I think that I do succeed at this, that by modeling it, it'll give people the space and freedom to feel like they can bring their own shit to the light too, so that they're not carrying that own burden internally as well.
Yeah, that's really good. Really good, Josh. I heard it put this way, that when you carry something like, so for example, let's say, most, especially in the Christian world, we're taught to the things that are shameful and parts of our being that we can't really expose because of fear of, judgment and all that kind of thing. But really what happens is we really internalize that message to the point that we're not even conscious of our own. We're not even aware of it. So it's like it's there and it's affecting us and we're trying to suppress it and keep it hidden, but we're not aware. So whatever you bring your own awareness into your own awareness is like, it's like shining light onto it. It's like exposing it within your being, not exposed for like ridicule or shame, like you were taught, right. I totally get that. But like bringing it into your awareness. And then once it's in your awareness, it's like what Brene Brown is saying, it's bringing light into it. It's kind of, I have this picture of like Superman looking at something with X-ray vision. It's just infuses it into light.
Right.
And then it's like, then you realize once that shame is gone, as you're bringing in light, then as far as just being authentic, it's just it's just a story. It's not good or bad,
right.
Which I think is awesome. My question, I guess, would be for you is, okay, you've written this book, which I know probably wasn't, obviously I know writing a book is a feat, and putting it out there in the world is probably a whole nother level. I'm sure you're feeling lots of emotions about that. It's another level of vulnerability. Mm-hmm. But what is your hope when you like lean into your heart and you picture somebody reading your book? What is your heart or hope that they would walk away with from reading that book? What do you want them to take into the world or take into their own life from your book?
Yeah. I definitely hope that more than anything, they can just know that they're not alone with whatever they've experienced. I talk about the full scope of my story and, try to hit anything that would have had an impact on me without really holding anything back. And that will probably make some people uncomfortable. I try to be upfront about that as well. Like, hey, we're going to talk about purity culture in very specific terms. We're going to talk about dealing with masturbation, talk about bullying. We're going to talk about infertility that my wife and I have experienced over the last several years. And the hope through that is, and I think that this does hold up, that most likely you have had something that aligns with at least one or two of these things. And even if you haven't, the principles are still there. You'll be able to see how this has impacted me to, again, get to the point where you, the reader, can say, okay, I definitely can relate to this part. I've had the same experience, or I've had a similar experience where I can now know that I'm not alone, even though I haven't told anybody about this. I was really thankful because some of my endorsements, they used language of like, I felt like I've known Josh for years. And I was like, they got it. That's perfect. And I hope that all of my readers feel that way, that I want you to feel comfortable with me, even if I haven't ever talked to you before, so that when you're weighing these own things in your own spirit, that you can say, God, I can actually talk about this because Josh talked about it.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah. I'm curious, Josh, what would you say to someone listening to us right now and they have struggled with shame, maybe their whole life or certainly in the church? And obviously, other than reading your amazing book, what advice would you give to somebody who was in that place if they said, if they were struggling with shame, they really especially felt it coming from other Christians or, from their church or their parents or, from that kind of a place? What are some keys or things you would say to them? How could we help them escape the power of shame?
Yeah, I think the first thing I would say is that in order to get to the life that is going to be best for you and the life that God really has for you, you can't be weighed by this shame. You can't be weighed down by it. It's going to be holding you back from the life that you have. And really, like I said, from the life that God wants for you. I used to believe, and I don't necessarily anymore, that God has like a specific plan for everybody. I don't really like that language anymore, but I still think the concept holds up that within Christianity, within the teachings of Jesus, there is a certain type of life that we're all meant to live. And shame is going to hold you back from getting to that place that you're going to feel the most alive and the most like yourself in Christ. From there, there's no doubt that many religious circles, again, whether it's by design or more by implication, no doubt they do place shame on you, that the model in many ways, like you said, Keith, with the worm theology, is there to try to make you feel broken. And I definitely, I would say that there is something to that in the sense that Christ does have something better for us, but you're not garbage. You're not trash. You're not broken to a point where you can't be your full self. So if you're in a system where the theology is along those lines, I'm not going to sit here and tell you need to leave your church, but it may be worth considering where those theologies are false.
Right. Well, I'll go ahead and tell people you should leave your church if it's that. No, because because I would say that. I mean, if I was talking to somebody, and I think I have probably said that to people, if you're in a church, if you're in any kind of a church, whether that's house church or traditional church or whatever that kind of church that you're in, if it's a place that emphasizes performance, if it, like you said, it sort of emphasizes your brokenness, if it creates a dependency upon the pastor or their theology, you know what I mean? Any of those things, those are just signs of a toxic situation. Where I don't care how many great friends you have there. I don't care if your parents go there and have gone there their whole life or anything like that. Like, you owe it to yourself for your own health and safety and spiritual well-being to run as fast as you can away from that kind of a situation. Because I think until you get disconnected from that kind of a system, you really have no hope of truly reaching a place where you can be healthy and whole, So I definitely think that's probably a very, very important thing to do.
Totally. And the only issue with that is that shame is to Christianity as wetness is to water. And the reason for that is because the belief in original sin that is rooted. It for the breadth of Christian history has been a foundational doctrine of Christianity, and this goes back to the Roman Catholic days. Obviously, the Protestant Reformation, it's like the doctrine of original sin on crack. They not only did not reject it, they emphasized it. So it's a real challenge I have found in the Christian religion. To actually have a correct identity because of that it is. And I honestly I had I'm sure you're addressing that in your book, and, but that is a huge reason that Christians are just, even though we know on one end, our intellectual mind says, okay, it's not okay to, it's wrong. Shame doesn't help us, but it's just almost like you can't escape it because of these ingrained beliefs. It's really a challenge.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I wanted to, let me just ask you a question. There's something was on my mind earlier, something you had said. You talked about your ideas about sin had changed. Do you mind? Do you have a way to define sin now? Like for you, how would you define sin? What do you think that is?
That's a tough one for me because it's kind of a nebulous thought, I guess. So I think it's all tied together with all the other theologies that I've had that have been ever growing. And I'll readily admit that I am more comfortable saying I don't have this figured out rather than trying to talk from a place of authority. But I'll say that I very much lean towards like a universalism perspective. So with that being said, I definitely don't believe sin is anything that can keep us from God. We'll start there. Yep. For a long time, I was kind of operating from the perspective of maybe sin would be I guess anything that keeps us from the life we want to live, I guess, or from our community, from living like a whole and complete life. At this point, I would honestly say sin is basically not even in my vocabulary. It's something I don't ever think about, other than, conversations like this where we have this word that we're all kind of familiar with. So it's a good base, a good point that we can track on or whatever. But at this point, being that I don't believe that there's anything I can do that would be greater than the overwhelming grace that God can provide, it's something that I don't even really consider a factor in my theology.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
So then I shift. Oh, go ahead, Keith.
No, you go ahead.
I was just going to say, I shift that from, if I don't really think sin is a thing in and of itself, then we start to break down the things like the shame, the embarrassment, and the guilt that has nothing to do with our eternal status or our status in relation to God, and really just has to do with our understanding of ourselves and how we can get to the fullest life that we have available to ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's good. Well, Josh, wanted to ask you, like I know you're active on social media. Where if somebody's tracking along and they want to get a copy of your book, how can they do that, and how can people get in touch with you and communicate with you further?
Perfect. Yeah, in terms of the book itself, it comes out, or it's available on Amazon. Excuse me. It came out February 11th on Amazon. You got the physical copy, the Kindle version, and so on. You can find me at facebook.com/Josh Roggie Writer, WRITER there. And I would love for you to follow me there and message me if you want. Especially through this process, I've realized that there still is, of course, an important component to vulnerability is knowing when you can do it in a safe environment. Mm-hmm. And I'm thankful that I had that through this process between my wife, my family, and my friends. And I want to be realistic and recognize that not everybody does. So if you need anything along those lines, you can message me as well. And I always try to respond as quickly as I can. I would love to have any conversations along those lines as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now, and you have a podcast as well, right? Did you mention that?
Yeah. Thanks for bringing that up there. So I also co-host the Harbor podcast. It's the Harbor with a period after the last letter there. And my buddy Jeff and I host it. And actually, I owe a lot to him for encouraging me to really push forward with this book as well. I gave him one of the earliest drafts, and he really encouraged me to reach out to Choir to get this in the hands of a publisher when my anxieties may not have allowed me to do it without that encouragement. So definitely come check us out there as well if you want to continue conversations like this.
Oh, that's awesome.
Sounds good.
Josh, thank you so much. It's been our honor to have you as our Heretic of the Week. Man, God bless you on your book. I hope it reaches the right people. And, I hope we can talk again soon.
Absolutely. It was my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks.
Thanks, Josh.
All right, bye. All right. Wow. Well, thanks, Josh, so much for being our Heretic of the Week. Excited about your new book. And thank you for kind of helping us kick off our topic for this episode, which is all about shame and guilt. So here's the thing. I don't know if I have much to say on this topic because I have no shame.
You don't. You have no shame.
Yeah. I would just say, look, shame, it's bad. Don't do it. And, just stop it. So there you go. What do you guys think about it?
Okay, but how? Because we all come from a Christian background, and shame is what we do,
right? Well,
and guilt is what we do.
Yeah, to be more serious, for me, I actually do care a lot about this topic. I'm just being silly. I really love. I'm not going to be shy about it. I really love Brene Brown. I think she is amazing. I've read a lot of her books. I've listened to a lot of her lectures and stuff. And interviews with her. I think she's a researcher. So she's done a lot of we're talking research on this for years, on the issue of shame, and guilt and vulnerability. And, so I think I probably would take a lot of what I would say on this topic from what I've learned from her. And this idea that, well, I guess to start off, shame is not the same as guilt. Shame is a deeper thing. Shame is like saying I'm a bad person, whereas guilt is just saying I did something bad. And anyone and everyone, that's sort of a healthy way to say, when you make a mistake, to just own it and say, hey, I'm sorry. I apologize. I did something that's bad. And that's vulnerability, and that's honesty and transparency. And that's good and healthy and healing. Shame is very different. Shame is saying, yes, I did something wrong, but it's because in my core, I am a bad person. And it's focusing on yourself, not on your behaviors. And here's the thing, like one thing that Brene Brown has shown in her research is that Shame is tied. There's a direct correlation between addiction, depression, violent, aggression, suicide, bullying, eating disorders, and all these kind of horrible things. They're directly tied to shame. But guilt is the opposite. Guilt doesn't map to any of those things, because guilt is owning the fact that I made a mistake, but I can learn from my mistake, and I can, I'm not a bad person. I just made a mistake, and I'm committed to making it right again. Right. So shame and guilt are not the same thing. And shame is something that, you're right. Christianity, unfortunately, a lot of people in Christianity leverage shame and fear as a way to manipulate and control people. And it definitely is something you should run from when you hear people using those kinds of tactics and that kind of language.
Yeah. Jamal, you probably deal with a lot of this in your coaching work that you do, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It does come up for sure. Especially when you recognize areas where, maybe, I think vulnerability is a scary thing. Yeah. Especially I've discovered that vulnerability is especially difficult for men. And so I think, whereas women tend to, I know that's a stereotype, but women tend to be more comfortable with feeling their emotions. But men tend to, vulnerability just feels a little unsafe. And I don't mean by vulnerability like just an open book. I mean vulnerability in the sense of like being able to acknowledge when you're hurting or when things are bothering you.
Yes.
And I think that what I have discovered in my work is that there's a sense of, there's a lot of shame over that, and that'll keep you, that's a perspective, but it does keep you stuck, and that's the guilt is something different, I think, than shame, obviously, like you guys are talking about. So, Keith, I know you mentioned that. So it's, I think guilt can have can be a positive element to it if it's looked at in the right way. So, but yeah, shame's it's a big deal. It feels it's an assessment that something's wrong with us, or that we're not in the right place at the right time, and we should be further along than we are. That's a big stumbling block in the work I do. People say, I can't believe this is still affecting me. I've done all this work and I'm being affected, and it all means all this. And so, yeah, there's a story behind it for sure.
Do you think a lot of it kind of comes back to this idea that at our core as human beings, we are filthy? Do you think a lot of it plays in that sort of Augustinian original sin nonsense, that at our true essence, that we are just wretched worms?
Total depravity.
And no matter what we do, we can never do right. So every time we stumble, every time we kind of fuck things up, anytime we think the wrong thoughts, it comes back, well, that's just the way I am. This is just who I am at my core.
Right.
And so it's just piled on and piled on and piled on, and we can never get out from under the rubble.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, of course. I mean, we've talked about this a lot. I mean, this is one of the most toxic things about Christianity, and it's something that's been going on for a very long time. Yeah, we can go back to Augustine. We can certainly go to Calvinism and this idea of total depravity, where there's nothing good in me, and what I have called worm theology, which this whole idea of what a wretch I am, and there's nothing good in me. All my thoughts are evil, and just that sort of inner monologue that we've accepted it. We continued that little voice in our head, and the scary thing is that we think that voice is God. Because people have told us this, right? We think that God is the one in our head telling us, "Oh, you're such a loser. Oh, I can't believe you did that. You're so filthy. You're such a sinner." And that really, it breaks my heart. It makes me angry, because I don't think this isn't the gospel. This isn't what Jesus came out telling us. This isn't what the original idea was. He wasn't walking around telling everyone what losers and worms and failures they were. It was actually good news about how loved we are and how accepted we are, and that we have that God was in Christ, not counting our sins against us, but reconciling the world to himself. And like, these are the things that we should be focused on. Unfortunately, it's just a little too tempting. It's too easy. I had someone tell me this. I was just in LA last week and teaching that this thing, and this guy challenged me because I was talking about this love of God and all about Jesus. And he actually raised his hand and interrupted me and said, you're talking too much about Jesus. We're talking too much about the love of God. And wanted me to, balance it out with more about fear and wrath and guilt and shame. I'm like, geez, man, we can't seem to escape this. It's very sad.
It is very sad. I think it's one of the things that plagues the church more than anything.
Yeah.
For sure. I think when it comes to like the sense of guilt, the idea of guilt, I think, can have a positive trajectory.
Yeah.
Obviously, when it's not used against us, but a lot of times I remember, I'm not talking about guilt in the sense of like, again, I want to, most guilt, the way it's used in religious circles is not positive.
Well, I think it's closer to shame, don't you think? I mean, I think I would call that shame.
Yeah, totally. Well, I remember the days of like coming out of church services and, there would be a common question, at least in the circles I was in. People would say, well, how was church today? I'm like, it was so good, man. So good. I was so convicted.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you guys did that, but like, I totally remember that people were like, yeah, man, he was like on fire today. I was so convicted. I was so convicted. The Holy Spirit was so convicted.
Yeah, he kicked my butt. He kicked my butt spiritually.
And it was almost like they were like, yeah, it was good. I felt convicted. I'm like, it's like when people go to the gym, like, how was the workout? Dude, I killed it. I'm so sore.
Yeah.
And it was almost like there was this sense of like, if it feels bad, it's really good.
Right.
And I think we're kind of when I say we, it's a human condition. It's weird how this works when you have a belief, and it may not be a belief we even like. Mm-hmm. Like, for example, I think people are afraid that if people knew who they really were, that people would find out that they were bad or there was something wrong with them. And so I think we have this belief about ourselves that, unconsciously there's this belief that maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I don't measure up. Maybe there is something wrong with me. Yeah, so what happens is we get to this. Yeah, we have this belief, and then when we find out evidence for that in some weird way, it feels like, yeah, that's right. I so need a savior. Yeah, I so need a savior. I'm such a sinner. Thank you, Jesus. And it's like, it confirms the bad news. And I find it, it's interesting. And I hear this in the folks that are like talking about grace all the time too. They're like, yeah, Jesus he was my substitute, man. I'm so glad. I'm so thankful for Jesus. I'm so thankful because I just, on my own, I'm nothing. It's like, what?
Well, yeah. And then you also, are encouraged to, in that context, right? Beat yourself up because look how bad you are. You are so filthy. You are such a loser and such a horrible person. Look what your sin and your awfulness and your shame did to Jesus. And then that just makes you feel even worse, right? Instead of being like, oh, shouldn't this exchange be something positive? Like, why is this still bad? Yeah.
One of my favorite hymns is, I can't remember the name of it right now, but there's a line in it. Come thou fount, but there's a line in it at the bottom. It's like the bottom of the one of the stanzas. It's like, oh, to grace, how great a debtor daily I'm constrained to be. And it's like, oh, you're in debt. Yeah. That feels good.
I thought you paid my debt.
I'm in debt to this grace. I'm in debt to this, thank you, Jesus, for doing, like, thank you for doing. And I hear that language all the time. And it's nauseating to me.
Yeah, it is.
But I don't think people understand when they're coming from. It is literally a shame complex, and it doesn't make grace look good. First of all, what is grace? This idea of, undeserving favor of God. That's, I think, an idea of what people, or unmerited.
Yes.
Which I would agree with in the sense of unmerited, like you didn't perform for it. But to say it's undeserved, no, it's deserved. Of course it's deserved. What do you mean? If we to say I didn't deserve, like, yes, you did.
Yeah.
We would never tell our child, you don't deserve this bottle.
But I'm going to give it to you anyway.
But I give it to you.
Because I'm so good.
Like, sure, you deserve it because you're alive and you're worthy.
And I love you. Yeah.
Or how about this from Revelation? No one was found worthy in heaven or on earth to open the seals, except for one, the lamb that was slain before. This is the kind of bullshit that, that's how it gets peddled.
Yeah. But do you guys think this? I mean, I'm thinking of the recent the Super Bowl halftime show, and a lot of people, and it didn't seem just to be Christians, were shaming J-Lo and Shakira for doing their thing on stage. And it seemed like this whole thing like transcended this Calvinistic evangelical cultural view of shame. And it maybe it was just those people who were getting really upset, but it seemed like there was more of outrage that sort of went outside of those borders. So it seems like, is it something innate within humanity to feel shame for certain things, or is it this Christian culture that's sort of put out its tentacles into the bigger culture at large? Because it was really an odd thing to see that in this day and age, it wasn't just Christians who were getting upset at attractive, fit 50 and 42-year-old Latin women, Latinas doing their thing. Like, it seemed like a lot of people were upset by that and shaming them for doing that. Like, oh, we got to protect the children.
Yeah, well, but
right.
So it's kind of, I don't know. What do you guys think?
Well, I have a perspective on this. Okay, this is the halftime show,
right?
I think there's more going on. So I think obviously you can look at it and feel this shame kind of thing. And I don't think it's healthy. I don't think people do a good job of I think people are bothered. And again, this doesn't have to be religious. I mean, just people in general. Sometimes things bother us and we don't know why they bother us. And so the easy thing to do is to slip into scapegoating mode and start to like attack the external thing out there because we don't like how it makes us feel. I do think it bothered lots of people. And I don't think people understood why it bothered them. And I think it would be good to understand. I think that's where I think this could actually be a beneficial thing and say, okay, why? Okay, clearly you're not happy about the halftime show. So what's going on? Like, what's the story here? What's going on here?
I think it's jealousy, personally.
Right? No, I think so. But yeah, see, because here's the thing.
Jamal, what do you think?
Well, I didn't appreciate the show, the halftime show. No, I didn't. I didn't appreciate it, and I didn't appreciate the other one too with Adam Levine or whatever. Like I thought it was classless. I thought both of them were classless. But the only reason I say that, and I know that's controversial, people make, this is my opinion, but here's the thing. The reason that now I'm not shaming them. Like, that's their prerogative. They can do what they want. I don't even think it was immoral. I think they were doing it. But there's something in me that I found to be like, something doesn't sit well with me about the sexualization of the human body like that, if in that audience. I just think it just seemed out of place. And the reason for that, and it's the same thing. It's the same reason, like the Super Bowl, there's like, we decry the whole, sex slavery thing going on. And I agree with that. Like, I think it's a tragedy that there's such a hyper-sexualized, exploitative consciousness that's going on, especially it's all surrounding the Super Bowl every year. It's like tremendous what goes on in the underbelly of this sex trafficking dilemma. And I don't know, there was just something about it that didn't sit well with me. And I don't want to react by judging it and saying, okay, you guys are all bad. This is unhealthy. Like, how dare you do this? But I wanted to just pay attention to go, why didn't it sit well with me? And that's, I think it just, there was something about it to me that just felt uncomfortable, and it didn't like encourage me when I saw it. And I don't know. That's just how I felt, to be completely honest.
Yeah. Well, it didn't bother me. I mean, honestly, I was looking for I mean, I didn't watch it live. I didn't watch the Super Bowl at all, but I heard so much, crap about it. I actually went on YouTube and found, the Super Bowl show, and I watched it. Like, what's the big deal? And frankly, I saw nothing on it that was any more or less controversial than when I've watched the Grammys or American Idol or So You Think You Can Dance or any other program that ever, in primetime television that has people dancing to music. Like, it was like, yep, I've seen that before. I mean, I'm not a fan of it. It wasn't like, oh, I was awesome, but it also didn't offend me either. I just sort of like, no, that's not my kind of music. It's not my kind of entertainment. Like, I'm not into, that's not what I listen to when I'm listening to music for fun. But I didn't find it offensive. In fact, like, to me, I guess the way I looked at this whole thing was like, I feel like people were upset because J-Lo and Shakira weren't ashamed. And like, that's why they're angry. It's not, I didn't feel like so much that they wanted to put shame on J-Lo and Shakira as much as that they're outraged that these women could do this with such confidence, that they could do it and seem to be having so much fun doing it and showing their talent to sing and dance and perform this way in such a bold way and without any shame. I think that's what people are upset about. At least that's the way I perceived it, was like people were outraged that they weren't ashamed. And I'm thinking, why do you think they should have shame at all?
Well, see, the outrage is funny to me. It's interesting. Like, why the outrage? Just like, look, I'm not outraged by pole dancers and and like strippers.
Right.
Like strippers. I mean, there's strippers everywhere. There's pole dancers everywhere. And there's like, there's bars and you can go to that all the time.
In your own city right now. That's right.
Yeah. Like, it's not infuriating to me. I personally feel like it's exploitive of, even if they choose to do it. I still think it's a exploitive kind of low level vibe.
Sure.
So that's just how it affects me. But that's what I noticed. And I noticed, okay, that's why it doesn't sit well with me. But to resort to shaming and then how dare you, and this is immoral and this is wrong. I mean, that's not helpful to anybody,
Well, see, Jamal, I think you're taking the mature approach. It's like, you're talking about, this is how it makes me feel. I'm not comfortable with it. Therefore, I'm guessing you're not going to go watch it.
Sure,
but,
totally. And I did.
Yeah, and I think that's totally fine. Like, and it's, again, like Keith, like you, it's not. I don't listen to that type of music. But yeah, the interesting thing is then some people seem to take that uncomfortability and then want those women to be ashamed of themselves.
Totally.
And see, that's where the disconnect happens for me. It's like you just said, Jamal, that shame, or that shame they should feel, right, in our self-righteousness, that's what I want them to feel, because I'm uncomfortable, so therefore they should be uncomfortable with what they're doing. And that's where I see there's a big disconnect on what's healthy and what's unhealthy. I'd say Jamal and Keith, your point too is that's a healthy view of something that's like, well, it's not my thing, but okay.
Right.
Yeah. I think my thought is that I think it's classic just scapegoating when somebody is uncomfortable, they resort to, damn it, who's making me feel this way? It's right. Like, I don't want to feel what I'm feeling. And so somebody's to blame. Let me attack. So that's what we do. That's how you do it. You go, oh, that person's affecting me. Now, that commercial, those people, as opposed to taking the time to go, okay, this is clearly making me uncomfortable. Why? And that, again, that's self-reflection, self-awareness, which is important.
But here's the irony. I agree with you, Jamal. But here's the irony about that reaction. So you're right. So I see something, it makes me uncomfortable. And then the irony is my solution to that is to make everybody else uncomfortable. And I want everyone now to conform to what makes me comfortable. Like, I don't care. So in other words, I'm offended that you didn't think about me and how that would make me feel. Therefore, my solution is I want everybody to think about how I feel and just react, like respond in ways that make me comfortable. And that's one of my problems with, I think, sort of the Christian subculture, is that it has, for years, I've seen this in the Christian subculture. This is the reason why we create sort of the Christian version of the world. We want Christian skating rinks and Christian bowling alleys, and we want to get our Christian milk from a Christian cow. Why? Because it creates the illusion. We create a version of the world that's very Christianized. And why? Because it makes Christians comfortable, and it doesn't put them in situations where they have to, relate to people that aren't exactly like them. And that really bothers me. I think that in itself is something that I want to put a spotlight on that. And I want to say that's not the way we should be reacting.
Yeah, it's like the bunker mentality. It's
Yep.
like the Christian bomb shelter.
Yeah.
Like let's just build it so we can be protected
Wait
from
for Jesus
all
to
this
come
filth out
back and
there.
save us and take us out of here.
Yeah, but I do think honestly, it's like, can we sit in the tension of something? Because I don't think it's, because if somebody if they're bothered, like if someone was like, I was just so offended by that halftime show, what I would want to do if I was having a conversation with somebody that way, I would say, okay, I accept that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't join in on the bashing, but I would say, okay, why do you feel this way? Like what's going on in you? What's this? And there may be some valid things there, because there's just a lot of people that have been injured by, the sexualization of an objectification of people in this country, in this culture. And I think that people are just sensitive to that, but I don't think we know how to do it without judging or condemning the culture, as opposed to sitting with our own pain in it. Like, yeah, there's something, and you can I think you can transform a culture. You can transform a situation
Right.
by sitting in it and really being present with what's going on inside of you, and, scaling that inside of you. Like you literally can, one of the things I loved about the Messiah, okay, again, we did just a little plug for what's coming up, did an interview with the creator of the Messiah. One of the things I love about that show and about watching that character was his ability to do that. You know what I mean? Like he never condemned anybody. And I actually think this is true to what I understand about the person of Jesus. But like that, remember that, Keith, you watched the series.
Yeah.
Remember when that
Yeah.
prostitute came up and, was trying to seduce him?
Yes. I love
There was
that
not
scene.
for one moment, there was no shame or judgment in
yeah.
it. But his ability to be present to her and even to like what's going on around without actually engaging in it and getting sucked up into he was like that. When I read the Gospels and I see how Jesus interacted with people, and I see that quality of like, okay, like I'm here, I'm in it. I'm not like of it with you, but I'm not separate either. I'm in it. I'm with you. I'm here. And I think the ability for us to do that, even when we're like troubled in our spirit, and there were things that troubled Jesus. Clearly, he was troubled in spirit. There were many times he would be troubled in spirit, and it would say that I'm, troubled in spirit, or his spirit was provoked. He would he was feeling things deeply, but to do it without religious judgment or without withdrawing yourself is interesting. And I think it's the path forward. And because I think what it does is it creates in our culture the Christian bunker mentality where we judge and condemn. I think what that does is it's like the thing, what you resist persists. It's a principle. Like when you start to resist something, you empower it. And I think there's a reaction in our culture to the whole Puritan, ethos that's been with us for a couple hundred years, that the culture is still trying to break free from. And I think there was just such a reaction to that.
Yeah. I mean,
Well, and I mean, it reminds me of John, real quick, Keith. And then it reminds me of like John 8, where the woman, is brought before Jesus and they're going to stone her for the adultery. And he doesn't shame her.
No.
He doesn't say he condones what she was doing. He says, who condemns you of your sin? Well, I won't either, basically. Right. And so go and sin no more. That's it. No shame.
Yep.
Just okay. No one's going to condemn you. No one's stoning you right now. No one's going to kill you. So I'm not going to do any of that.
Yep.
So go work on yourself. Have some self-reflection.
And then
and that's it.
Yeah, Jesus. And I was going to say too, the other thing I found fascinating about the way Jesus reacted, like his suggestion was like, if you're offended, right? If something offends you, if your eye offends you because, you're lusting after this person or whatever, his suggestion is not go over there and tell that woman to put some clothes on.
To stop.
No. His suggestion is, if you're having trouble because you're lusting after a woman, deal with your own issue. Like recognize that, okay, you've got a problem with this. Why do you have a problem with this? Maybe you should, find ways to deal with this in yourself. Right. And so I honestly think that's much better advice. And unfortunately, Christians have taken the opposite advice, which is I'm offended and now I want to change everyone around me to not to conform to what I think is right and good and normal, rather than saying, okay, yep, I guess I got a problem with that, and maybe I need to take a step back and deal with that.
Yeah, well, you got a problem, pluck out your eye. You got a problem, cut off your hand. You got a problem, cut off your feet. It's about you.
Yes,
with the problem.
Yes,
go work on yourself.
Totally. One thought I wanted to add here is, what if if you want a fire to go out, you don't put fuel on it. You don't put wood on it. Whatever. That's clear. I think one of the reasons that Jesus could say to the woman caught in adultery, "Go and sin no more," is because the condemnation was gone. And then now she's free to actually live a life where there's not this, because I don't think, because the idea is like, oh, well, she was being the entire system of her day was literally against her in the sense of condemnation, and she could not break free. I don't think it was lack of information that was called, she knew the law in the sense of like adultery was a sin, quote unquote. But he's like, okay, yeah, you're free. There's no condemnation anymore. So I imagine her life looked different after that, from that point on. I would imagine that. That's just my understanding of it. So what if the energy of the halftime show is actually being fueled by the judgment? I think it was meant to be provocative. Mm-hmm. But something can only be provocative if there's something to come against it. And you take that energy away, nobody's going to be, you know what I mean? I think that energy that even produced, my understanding is that the energy that produced the halftime show could not sustain itself if it was not provocative. It'd be boring. It'd be like, who cares?
Right.
I'm not even impressed.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. There's got to be something to rebel against or push against or to create some sort of controversy. And if not,
it's salacious.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, look at this. They're shaking their body parts and like everybody's up in arms, this is what rock and roll,
take
that away.
Yeah. But this is the entire youth culture, right? Youth culture has always been about what will piss off your parents. That's what the movie I want to see. That's the music I want to listen to. That's how I'm going to shave my head or pierce my nose or ear or lip or whatever. Like, yeah, it's always built around what's going to create the controversy, what's going to create the shock. Of course. Yeah.
So what's fucking punk rock, man?
Yeah, it's like what if you take that energy away? It's done. You know what I mean? Like it's okay. It's like you can transcend. It's like So this is, you see, you got it, Jamal. This is it. So look, this is what I'm saying. So what if Christians, instead of freaking out every time something like this happened, what if instead they did what Jesus said and they just dealt with their own reactions to it? And then they take all the energy out of that thing. They take the power away from it. It doesn't have any power anymore because no one's freaking out. Yeah.
There you go. We just solved the problem. Thank you, guys.
What if? A perfect way to wrap up the culture series with solving all these damn problems.
So glad we did that. Finally.
Yes. So yeah, I'm excited for the next series. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. So if you're listening to this and if this is your first time, go back, listen to the whole Culture Wars series. Get excited for the metaphysical series. And in the meantime, go check out our website, heretichappyhour.com. We have a store over there. You can catch up on all the latest episodes. We've got some hilarious pillows. We've got great shirts. And and we also have a Facebook group that you can join. So please do that. Just look us up on Facebook. You can look up the Heretic Happy Hour podcast, or you can look up Heresy After Hours. Heresy After Hours, you can join for free.
Yeah.
Heretic Happy Hour podcast, you got to be a Patreon supporter.
Yeah, baby.
Because that's where we chat to y'all. So do that.
Yeah, and like you said, if you want to get in that amazing, awesome, private, members only Facebook group, Heretic Happy Hour Facebook group, you can only do that by supporting us on Patreon. So go to patreon.com/Heretic Happy Hour. And not only that, will you get into this amazing group, you will also unlock so much cool stuff. Guys, we record bonus content, bonus interviews, bonus conversations. You only get to hear that cool extra bonus stuff if you are a member of the Patreon, if you're a supporter of the Patreon page. So go on, get over there, sign up, unlock all that awesome stuff, jump in the Heretic Happy Hour Facebook group. And yes, we really are going to be putting out very soon a Slippery Slope board game designed by our friend of the podcast, David Hayward, the Naked Pastor. It's going to be awesome.
Yes, sir.
Awesome. Hey, and also, from time to time, sometimes the listeners will, want to have like deeper conversations, and obviously do that in our bonus content on Patreon. But sometimes, for whatever reason, we've had listeners that have a desire to just have a private conversation with us, the host here of the podcast. And so sometimes we don't talk about that, but that is a possibility for you if you're listening to this and you feel like you want to have just a one-on-one conversation with us. We do private sessions. If that's something that, as far as like wanting to talk to the 3 podcast hosts together, we do that. We just had one recently, and it was such a man. I don't know about you guys, man, but I tell you what, I was so blessed by that.
Yeah.
And just encouraged by that conversation we had with a listener. We just got to spend an hour with a listener and just dialoguing. And if you're interested in that, reach out to us and inquire about that, and we'll tell you some of the details that's involved in that and what that will take. But it is we really appreciated that the other day. So also I think we're on iTunes, is that right? We're on iTunes now.
I think we finally got on there. Yeah,
right.
Yep. So you can
just
it really helps if you would rate and review the show on iTunes. It's pretty simple. You can do it right from your smartphone, or you just go there and give us the stars and write a positive review. No negative reviews.
Yeah, all 5
there
stars.
Are some on there.
All 5 stars.
All 5 stars and positive reviews. Helps the show.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And if you want that private session, you find that at the store at the website. So go do that. Yeah.